The autumn breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves through Riverside Park as Nolan Rivers pushed his daughter Chloe on the old wooden swing. Her delighted giggles filled the crisp afternoon air, a sound that never failed to lift his spirits, even during the toughest times. At 32, Nolan had learned to find joy in these simple moments, especially when the weight of single parenthood felt overwhelming. "Higher, Daddy, higher." Chloe squealed, her auburn curls dancing in the wind as the swing carried her toward the golden canopy of oak trees above. Her emerald eyes sparkled with pure happiness, the same eyes that reminded Nolan daily of someone he'd tried hard to forget. Nolan smiled genuinely. Pushing aside the morning's rejection letter from another art gallery, 3 months of trying to sell his paintings had yielded nothing but polite dismissals and mounting bills. But Chloe didn't need to carry the burden of adult worries. At 6 years old, her world should be filled with playground adventures, bedtime, stories, and the endless wonder that childhood offered. "Hold tight, sweetheart," Nolan called out, giving her another gentle push. His hands, once smooth from his brief time in an office job, now bore the calluses of odd construction work he'd taken to keep food on their table. Art didn't pay the bills, but it fed his soul, and he refused to give up on his dreams entirely. The peaceful afternoon was suddenly interrupted by the deep purr of an expensive engine. A sleek silver Bentley pulled to the curb, its polished surface reflecting the autumn sunlight like a mirror. Nolan barely glanced at the luxury vehicle. This wasn't their neighborhood where such expensive cars were as rare as snow in July. He was more concerned with Chloe, who had leaped from the swing mid-arc, chasing after her favorite purple ball that had rolled toward the park's edge. "Chloe, be careful," he called, jogging after her with the practiced urgency of a father who'd learned to anticipate every possible danger. The little girl stopped abruptly, her ball forgotten at her feet. She stood perfectly still, staring at something near the street. With the intense concentration she usually reserved for solving puzzles or examining interesting insects, a small face scrunched up in thought. The same expression she wore when trying to remember where she'd left her favorite stuffed rabbit. "Daddy," she said softly, not taking her eyes off whatever had captured her attention. "That lady by the fancy car? She's looking at us funny." Nolan followed his daughter's gaze and felt his world shift on its axis. Stepping out of the Bentley was Victoria Blackwood, a woman he hadn't seen in 6 years, but would recognize anywhere. She stood beside the car wearing an elegant navy coat that probably cost more than Nolan made in 3 months. Her dark hair was styled in a sophisticated bob, and she carried herself with the poise of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms. Victoria was older now, more polished, but unmistakably the woman who had once shared his dreams and shattered his heart. Their eyes met across the distance, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. Victoria's composed expression faltered, her hand gripping the car door handle as if it were an anchor in stormy seas. She looked from Nolan to Chloe with an intensity that made his chest tighten. There was something in her gaze, a longing mixed with pain that he recognized because he'd felt it himself during countless sleepless nights. Victoria took a tentative step forward, then stopped as if an invisible barrier held her back. Her lips parted as though she wanted to speak, but no words came. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history and the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. Then, as suddenly as she had appeared, Victoria turned away. She slipped back into the Bentley with practiced grace, and the car pulled away from the curb, leaving only the faint scent of expensive perfume lingering in the autumn air. "Daddy." Chloe's voice brought Nolan back to the present. "Who was that lady? Why did she look at us like that? Like she knew us, but was sad about it." Nolan knelt down to Chloe's level, his hands trembling slightly as he brushed a curl from her face. How could he explain that the elegant stranger was the mother who had walked away when Chloe was just 6 months old? How could he tell his innocent daughter that the woman in the expensive car was the same person whose absence had left a hole in both their lives? "She's nobody important, princess," he said, the lie tasting bitter on his tongue. "Just someone who thought she recognized us." But even as the words left his mouth, Nolan knew they weren't true. Victoria Blackwood was many things successful, driven, The woman who had chosen her career over their family, but she would never be nobody important. Not to him, and certainly not to the little girl who had inherited her mother's eyes and brilliant mind. Chloe seemed to accept his explanation, but Nolan noticed how she kept glancing back toward the street as they walked home, as if expecting the mysterious woman to return. Little did either of them know that this chance encounter would set in motion events that would change all their lives forever. That evening, Nolan tried to focus on preparing dinner, while Chloe colored at their small kitchen table. Sauce bubbled on the stove, filling their modest apartment with the comforting aroma of garlic and herbs. But his mind kept drifting back to the park, to the way Victoria had looked at Chloe with such raw emotion. "Daddy, I need my green crayon," Chloe announced, sliding off her chair. "I think I left it in your room yesterday when we were looking at that art book." "I'll get it for you, sweetheart," Nolan offered, but Chloe was already skipping down the hallway. "I can find it," she called back cheerfully. "I'm a good finder." Nolan heard her rummaging around in his bedroom, opening and closing drawers with the determination of a child on a mission. He should have followed her. His room wasn't exactly child-proofed, but the sauce was threatening to burn, and he got distracted trying to save their dinner. Then came the crash, followed by an unusual silence. That made Nolan's stomach drop. "Oops," came Chloe's voice, but it lacked her usual carefree tone. He found her sitting cross-legged on his bedroom floor, surrounded by scattered photographs that had spilled from an old shoebox. The box itself lay on its side near the closet, having apparently fallen when Chloe climbed up to reach the high shelf where he kept art supplies. "I'm sorry, Daddy," Chloe said, but her attention wasn't on the mess. She was staring intently at a photograph in her small hands, her emerald eyes wide with recognition. Nolan's heart stopped. The photo Chloe held was one he'd kept hidden for years, him and Victoria at a summer festival, both of them young and laughing. Victoria's head rested on his shoulder, and they looked so happy, so full of hope for their future together. It was taken just months before Chloe was born, before everything fell apart. "Daddy," Chloe said, her voice barely above a whisper, "who is this pretty lady with you? And why does she look just like me?" The photograph trembled in her small hands as she studied it with the intensity only children possessed. She held it at arm's length, comparing the woman in the picture to her own reflection in the bedroom mirror. "Look, Daddy. Her eyes are the same color as mine, and her hair, it's the same too, but longer." She paused, processing this information with the careful consideration of a child trying to solve a puzzle. "Is this the lady from the park? The one who looked at us funny?" Nolan felt the walls he'd built around this secret beginning to crumble. Chloe was too observant, too intelligent. She'd already made the connection he'd hoped she'd never make. At least not until she was older and better able to understand the complexities of adult relationships. "Yes," he said simply, sitting down on the floor beside her. "That's her." Chloe nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something she'd suspected all along. She set the photo down gently and looked directly into her father's eyes, with a seriousness that seemed far beyond her 6 years. "Daddy," she said, her voice carrying a weight that made his heart ache, "is she my mama?" The question hung in the air between them like a bridge Nolan wasn't sure he was ready to cross. He'd always known this day would come, but he'd hoped to have more time to prepare, more time to find the right words that would explain without causing pain. "Yes, Chloe," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "She's your mama." Chloe processed this information with the remarkable resilience that children often displayed in the face of life-changing revelations. She picked up the photograph again, studying both faces with new understanding. "We all look happy together," she observed matter-of-factly, like a real family. "So why doesn't she live with us now? Did something bad happen?" Nolan pulled his daughter into his lap, holding her close as he struggled to find age-appropriate words for an adult situation. How could he explain abandonment to someone who had never known it? How could he tell her that her mother had chosen career over family without destroying her innocent faith in love? "Sometimes," he said carefully, "grown-ups make decisions that are very hard to understand. Your mama thought she couldn't take care of you the way you deserved, so she decided it would be better if I raised you by myself." Chloe was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this explanation. Then she looked up at him with those eyes, Victoria's eyes, and asked the question that would haunt Nolan for weeks to come. But she came back to look at us today. Does that mean she wants to take care of me now? Does that mean she wants to be my mama again? The hope in her voice was like a knife to Nolan's heart, because the truth was, he didn't know what Victoria wanted. And after 6 years of building a life without her, he wasn't sure he was ready to find out. The morning after, Chloe's discovery brought unexpected visitors to their modest apartment. Nolan was brewing coffee when a gentle knock echoed through their small living room. Through the peephole, he saw Grace Patterson, their elderly neighbor from apartment 4B, holding what appeared to be a newspaper. "Good morning, dear," Grace said when he opened the door, her weathered face creased with concern. "I thought you should see this before Chloe does." The newspaper's front page featured a photograph of Victoria leaving their building the previous evening, though Nolan couldn't remember seeing her return. The headline read, "Business Mogul's Secret Past Revealed. Below it, a smaller caption speculated about Victoria Blackwood's mysterious connection to a struggling single father and his daughter. "How did they even know?" Nolan muttered, scanning. The article that painted Victoria as a heartless woman who had abandoned her family for corporate success. "Daddy, who's at the door." Chloe appeared in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Grace quickly folded the newspaper. "Just your lovely neighbor checking on my favorite little artist," she said warmly. "Chloe, would you like to help me bake cookies later? I have a new recipe for chocolate chip ones." As Grace departed, Nolan's phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but he answered anyway. "Mr. Rivers? This is Detective James Morrison. I work for a private investigation firm. I believe we need to talk about Victoria Blackwood." An hour later, Morrison sat in their living room while Chloe played in her bedroom. He was a tall man in his 50s with kind eyes and the patient demeanor of someone accustomed to delivering difficult news. "Ms. Blackwood hired me 3 months ago," Morrison explained. "She wanted to know how you and Chloe were doing." "Intrusive, just basic welfare checks, school records, medical information, general well-being." Nolan felt a mixture of anger and confusion. "She's been watching us." "More like protecting you from a distance," Morrison corrected. "Did you know that Chloe's private kindergarten scholarship last year came from an anonymous donor? Or that when you had that emergency room visit for her broken arm, someone covered the portion your insurance didn't?" The revelation hit Nolan like a physical blow. All those times he'd wondered how they'd managed financially, all those small miracles that had kept them afloat. Victoria had been there, invisible but present. "She never stopped caring," Morrison continued. "But she was terrified of disrupting the life you'd built. Yesterday's encounter at the park wasn't planned. She was supposed to observe from a distance, but when she saw Chloe, she couldn't help herself." "What does she want now?" Nolan asked. Before Morrison could answer, Chloe bounded into the room, her face bright with excitement. "Daddy, I drew a picture for the pretty lady. Can we give it to her?" She held up a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. The tallest figure wore what appeared to be a business suit. The middle one had curly hair, like Nolan's, and the smallest had long hair and a big smile. "That's us as a family," Chloe explained proudly. "I want to show her that I can draw good pictures. Maybe she want to be friends with us." Morrison's expression softened. "She would treasure that picture, Chloe. I'm sure of it." That afternoon, while Chloe napped, Nolan found himself standing outside the towering glass building that housed Blackwood Industries. The contrast between his faded jeans and paint-stained shirt and the suited executives flowing in and out of the building couldn't have been starker. The receptionist initially seemed skeptical about his request to see Victoria, but after a brief phone call, she directed him to the 50th floor. The elevator ride felt endless, giving Nolan too much time to second-guess his decision. Victoria's office was a monument to success, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, awards lining the walls, fresh flowers on a conference table that could seat 20 people. But when she turned from the window to face him, all Nolan saw was the vulnerable woman he'd once loved. "You look tired," he said, noting the dark circles under her eyes. "I haven't been sleeping well," Victoria admitted. "Nolan, I know this is confusing. I know I have no right to intrude on your life after all these years, but Seeing Chloe yesterday, you've been helping us financially. It wasn't a question. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. I couldn't bear the thought of her going without. I know money doesn't make up for my absence, but it was the only way I could contribute to her well-being without disrupting your life. She knows, Nolan said simply. She found our old photos. She knows you're her mother. Victoria sank into her chair as if the weight of his words had physically struck her. What did you tell her? The truth. That you thought she deserved better than you could give her. Nolan pulled Chloe's drawing from his jacket pocket. She made this for you. Victoria's hands trembled as she took the drawing. Tears she'd been holding back for years finally spilled over as she traced the 3 stick figures with her finger. She drew us as a family, she whispered. She's hoping you might want to be friends with us, Nolan said. Our words, not mine. Hurt. I was so young when she was born, Victoria finally said. 29 felt ancient then, but looking back, I was just a scared girl who didn't know how to balance love and ambition. I thought I had to choose. And now? Now, I realize that the choice was an illusion. I've spent 6 years building an empire, but it feels hollow without the people I love to share it with. In fear, is there any chance you could forgive me? Not for my sake, but for hers. Before Nolan could answer, his phone buzzed with a text from Grace. Emergency. Chloe fell at the playground. We're at Memorial Hospital. The emergency room at Memorial Hospital buzzed with controlled chaos, but all Nolan could focus on was the small figure lying on the examination bed. Chloe's left arm was clearly broken, her face streaked with tears. But she was conscious and talking, a good sign that eased some of his panic. Daddy, she cried when she saw him rushing through the door. I was trying to go across the monkey bars like the big kids, but I fell. It's okay, sweetheart. Amanda Foster, the pediatric orthopedist, explained that Chloe would need surgery to properly set the bone. It's a clean break, nothing we can't fix. She'll be in a cast for about 6 weeks, then good as new. As they prepared Chloe for surgery, she looked up at Nolan with drowsy eyes. The pre-medication making her unusually philosophical for a 6-year-old. Daddy, when I was falling, I thought about the lady in the picture. I wished she was here to help take care of me too. Nolan's heart clenched. Why, sweetheart? Because then you wouldn't have to be scared all by yourself. Grown-ups need help. Too sometimes. 2 hours later, as Chloe slept off the anesthesia, Nolan sat in the uncomfortable hospital chair, exhaustion finally catching up with him. That's when Victoria appeared in the doorway, still wearing her business suit but looking completely undone. Morrison told me what happened. How is she? Surgery went well. She have a cast for 6 weeks. Nolan gestured to the chair beside him. You don't have to. Yes, I do, Victoria said firmly, settling into the chair. If you'll let me? They maintained a quiet vigil as Chloe slept, occasionally joined by Grace, who brought coffee and homemade sandwiches. He claimed was from Chloe's aunt Victoria's whole office staff. When Chloe finally woke up, her first words were, "Did the pretty lady come to visit me?" "I'm here," Victoria said softly, moving closer to the bed. "How are you feeling?" Chloe studied Victoria's face with the intensity she reserved for important observations. "You look like you've been crying. Are you sad about my arm?" Little Victoria admitted. "I don't like seeing you hurt. Daddy cries sometimes when I get hurt too. But then he makes it better with hugs and stories." Chloe considered this for a moment. "Do you know any good stories?" Over the next 3 days of Chloe's hospital stay, Victoria proved to be an excellent storyteller. She shared tales of her business travels, painting pictures of different cities and cultures that sparked Chloe's imagination. More importantly, she listened with genuine interest as Chloe talked about her school, her friends, and her dreams of becoming either an artist like her daddy or a lady who helps people like the nice doctors. On the second day, Mrs. Helen Carter, Chloe's school principal, stopped by for a visit. She was a perceptive woman who had watched Chloe thrive despite the challenges of single-parent life. The hallway, Chloe often draws pictures of families with 3 people. When I ask her about the third person, she always says it's someone special who might come home someday. I think she's been waiting for you longer than anyone realized. Dr. Foster also noticed the positive change in Chloe's recovery. She's healing remarkably well, both physically and emotionally. Having additional family support clearly agrees with her. By the third day, Chloe was comfortable enough with Victoria to ask the question that had been brewing in her 6-year-old mind. "Victoria, why did you go away when I was little?" Victoria had been dreading this moment, but she met Chloe's curious gaze with honesty. "I thought I didn't know how to be a good mama, so I thought it would be better for you if I wasn't around to mess things up." "But that's silly," Chloe said matter-of-factly. "Know how to braid hair when I was little, but he learned. Now he's really good at it." The simple wisdom of her words brought tears to Victoria's eyes. "You're absolutely right. Are you going to learn now?" Chloe asked hopefully. "If your daddy says it's okay, I'd like to try very hard to learn how to be a good mama to you." Chloe looked from Victoria to Nolan, her green eyes bright with possibility. "Daddy, is it okay?" Their daughter, seeing the genuine love and care she showed, witnessing Chloe's joy at having her mother's attention. The scared young woman, who had fled 6 years ago, had grown into someone capable of putting Chloe's needs first. "I think we could try," he said carefully. "But it has to be slow, and Chloe's happiness comes first." "Always," Victoria agreed immediately. Over the following weeks, they established a new routine. Victoria would visit twice a week, taking Chloe to the park, helping with homework, and slowly building the relationship she'd missed. Oliver proved to be a wonderful uncle, teaching Chloe card games and bringing books about successful women throughout history. One evening, as autumn turned to winter, the three of them sat in Nolan's living room. Chloe was coloring a new picture, while Victoria and Nolan worked on a jigsaw puzzle, a domestic scene that felt both foreign and perfectly natural. "I've decided to restructure my company, promoting my assistant to CEO and taking on a consulting role. I want to be more present, not just for visits, but for everyday life. Soccer practices, parent-teacher conferences, bedtime stories, all of it." Chloe looked up from her coloring. "Does that mean you're going to live with us?" Victoria and Nolan exchanged glances. They'd been rebuilding their friendship slowly, but the romantic connection would take time to explore if it was meant to happen at all. "Not yet," Victoria said gently. "But I'm going to get an apartment nearby, so I can be close enough to help take care of you every day. Like a real family, but in different houses." "Exactly like that." 6 months later, on a warm spring day, Chloe's cast had long been removed, and she was back to her fearless playground adventures. Nolan's art was finally gaining recognition, thanks partly to Victoria's connections, but mostly due to his undeniable talent. Victoria had indeed moved nearby and had become a constant, reliable presence in Chloe's life. The three of them were at the same park where it all began, sharing a picnic lunch under the oak trees. Chloe was chasing butterflies while her parents watched with contentment. "Do you think she'll remember any of this when she's older?" Victoria asked. "The time when we weren't together?" "She'll remember that love brought us back together," Nolan said, "and that sometimes the best families are the ones that choose to keep trying, even when it's hard." Chloe ran back to them, breathless and excited. "I caught a butterfly. Well, not really caught it, but it landed on my hand." "We saw," Victoria said, pulling her daughter close. "It was beautiful, just like our family," Chloe declared, with the confidence of a child who had never doubted that love would find a way. As the afternoon sun filtered through the leaves above them, painting everything in golden light, Victoria finally understood what she'd been searching for all those years in boardrooms and business deals. The greatest success wasn't measured in profits or power, it was measured in moments like this. Surrounded by the people who mattered most. The little girl who had once asked an innocent question about a crying stranger in a Bentley now had her answer, yes, that was her mommy. And finally, her mommy had come home.